Hey, friends, welcome to Tiny Retail. We're here to share our journey with our small business tips, tricks, and just general things that we learned along the way that we think will be great for other people that are starting off in small retail. So today we're going to talk about how to identify brand trends. As any retailer knows, really retail is all about hitching yourself to the wagon of other brands, right? And the strength of your retail shop is largely going to be predicated on the strength of the brands that you choose to partner with in those business relationships. So making sure you've got the right assortment of brands is always really critical to success in any retail venture. And there's a difference between popularity and trend. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy to identify what the popular brands are. Within any retail industry, depending on what your niche is, you probably in your mind have a pretty good idea of what is the number one anchor brand in your industry. And if you were to take 5 minutes, you could probably sit down and write down one, two, three, four, five by popularity. But that's different than trend. And oftentimes, being a leader in your specific retail niche is not identifying what's most popular. It's what identifying is going. What it's identifying what's going to be popular in the future. I tell people all the time one of the most important parts of my job as a retail shop owner or any small business owner is predicting the future, because you have to make decisions today that affect outcomes tomorrow. It's constantly what we're doing. And as that applies to brands, you really have to make sure you're forward thinking, because a lot of retail shops purchase on cycles. And if you're making purchases now or 12 months in advance for a season in the future, sometimes you have to figure out not what is popular right now, but what is more likely to be popular at that time and going forward. So brand trend is incredibly important. And we're going to talk about today, we're going to focus on just one tool. There's a lot of different ways to think about this, but I think this tool is so critical in helping you identify within your niche which brands are on the way up and which brands are on the way down, so you can make smart decisions with that information. So the tool I'm going to talk about today, it's very well known. There's no secrets here, but when I talk to other small business owners, I'm really surprised at how many people in that industry don't know about this tool, and also how many people, and quite honestly, I haven't really talked to more than one or two people that have ever used it. And I think that's just a missed opportunity, because you can fill your store with the right brands going forward with this tool. So the tool I'm going to talk about today is a tool called Google Trends. Pretty simple, trends.google.com. And Google is king. I always refer to Google as the big G, because if you're in small business, you're in any business, we all bow at the altar of Google. You don't have to love it. I don't love it, but you have to make peace with it, because if you don't make peace with Google, um, there's no future for you in retail. Trust me. So Google Trends is a great resource, because what it does is that Google's a data company first, and it takes all this data that Google's constantly getting through search, through some things maybe that aren't where none of us are really comfortable which includes our email and other things. Google Trends essentially takes specifically their search data and amalgamates it into an interface that's really easy to use, explore, and identify how are Google searches trending for specific topics. Now, obviously, you could use this for a lot of different things. If you want to settle an argument about who's more popular in current culture, Tupac or Biggie, you could answer that question on Google Trends, because it truly is a great interface for determining current interest in a topic. What's great about that is you can extrapolate topic to brand. What is the interest in specific brands? Because we all know people Google questions they have about things they care about, questions they have about things they're trying to answer, and learning about things, and your Google Trend data is a great way to see is a topic, aka brand, trending up or trending down. It's also a great resource for force ranking. So, like for example, let's say you're trying to figure out, maybe you don't know what the top 5 brands are in your industry. Google Trends is not only a good way to determine trend, but also current status. What brands are getting more Google activity? And we'll walk through that. You can kind of parse out the data in that way. You can parse out the data within specific industries. But also, and I think this is really, really critical for tiny businesses, small businesses, is you can actually pare that data down geographically. So, for instance, our original shop, Feral Shops in Denver, and Denver's kind of a unique place, very big city, urban environment. Very focused on the outdoor community. It's a young city, so demographically, it's not going to map on to say like a Philadelphia. You're going to have a very different group there. And if you're in Denver, does it really make sense for you to capture data that accounts for rural areas and maybe the South and the Northeast? And there's just different places with different interests. Now, not to say you should dismiss that information, but Google Trends allows you to actually identify trends within your very narrow, specific geographic area. Now, if there's not enough data, if you're in, my hometown, Elberfeld, Indiana, you're probably not going to be able to figure out, are more people in Elberfeld, Indiana searching for chocolate chip cookies instead of blueberry muffins. So there are kind of down, I should say, kind of floor uh, base level that Google needs enough data to actually be able to project things. But you get the point. You can pare it down to a certain degree, and all this information is really, really, really useful. So let me dive in really quickly. And so we're an outdoor gear shop. So I'll kind of walk through this in one way we might look at it, but that will map on to pretty much any retail little niche you may have because we all work with brands. So because we're an outdoor gear shop, we work with a lot of different brands in the outdoor industry. So I'm just going to click on explore here, and I'll start with the easy one, and it's the brand that I think most people know, and the brand, one of 2 or 3 brands that most people think about when they think about the outdoor industry right now is Patagonia, right? So here I'm just going to type in Patagonia. And you'll see some options here: search term, topic, clothing company. So when you're talking about brands, this is a good example. Patagonia is also a place down in South America, Chile, I believe. And you don't want to conflate that data. You don't want to capture the search terms from anyone that might be traveling to Patagonia. So we don't want to conflate the data. So we want to make sure we're not capturing that. So I'm going to make sure I narrow down in on the clothing company here. Okay. Interest over time, very interesting. So there's a few different ways you can kind of manipulate the data. Like I said, first is geography. If you're in the United States and you're a big retail company throughout the country, you might just keep it there for now. Past 12 months is one way to look at it. I actually like extending this to 5 years. The reason I like extending this to 5 years is because that gives us a statistically significant sample size to see trends. Now, when I click on this, the first thing you're going to see, and this is going to look familiar to so many of you in retail, is that seasonal up and down, up and down, up and down. What you're going to see here, obviously, this is going to be holiday season. Makes a lot of sense. The most Google searches you're going to see for Patagonia appears to be that like last week of November there, last week of November there, last week of November there. We had an interesting little spike here, which looks like it was in September. Who knows what was going on there? We could probably figure that out with a little bit of research. For our purposes, that's not really important because what we're really just trying to determine is the popularity of this brand going up, going down, or staying steady. But that's an interesting little blip. It'd be, there might be a little marketing nugget of gold in there if we went back and saw like what did Patagonia do, September, ninth, 10th, or leading up to that led to this massive spike in interest for their brand. So I might dig into that in a future video. And then again there last week in November. So obviously, first thing that jumps out to you is the seasonality, big peak for holiday level. You're going to see that with just about any retail brand, most retail brands. But what jumps off the page here? You see a steady decline, year over year over year. So here we're peaking in 2019, down in 2020, down again in 2021, down again in 2022. Now, what's going on here? This is probably the most popular brand in the outdoor industry. It's a world-class brand. Patagonia has so many things going for them. Their mission, their focus on the worn wear program. They're a world-class brand. We used to work with them at Farrell, and it was a real treat. They were fantastic. So you would kind of, maybe a lot of people would be surprised by this. How is Patagonia going down in interest? Well, could be a lot of reasons. Nothing stays cool forever. There's always this counterculture thing of, if something's cool long enough, eventually a counterculture builds against it just by virtue of, looking for something else or wanting to be, slightly off trend or ahead of trend. But here we go. We see a very clear downward trend in interest over time. Trust me, Patagonia is doing great. But that's interesting, because if you were looking at this and saying, I want to bring in the next big thing, or I want to bring in the thing that's trending up, even though Patagonia might be the strongest brand in the outdoor industry, it may not be the brand that 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, if this trend continues, who knows what that looks like. Now, if they're doing 5x, 10x of every other brand in the industry, it might not matter that much, but food for thought. Okay, so let's look at what's great about this tool is you can compare brands. It pulls it into the same chart, and this is where the magic is. So I'm going to punch in a different brand that we work with, Outdoor Research. And if you're an outdoor research junkie, you might not be real excited about the way this is going to lay out. So with Outdoor Research, there's no brand here, or it doesn't say clothing company. That's fine. With most brands, there's going to be a little conflation, but with this one, I don't think that's a big deal, because Outdoor Research is not a common term or something that's going to be mixed up too bad. So I'm just going to click on topic rather than search term, and you'll see how that doesn't look good for Outdoor Research, does it? Now, this is where you have to put your thinking cap on and say, okay, I'm looking at Patagonia, it's trending down. Maybe I don't want to hitch my horse to that wagon, but at the end of the day, it's still doing significantly more, basically a little, maybe 12x, 13x the searches, Google searches that Outdoor Research is. So let's say I want to look at that Outdoor Research, because Patagonia kind of blows it out of the water. You don't really see the data real clear. I'm just going to remove Patagonia for right now, so we can just look at the Outdoor Research statistics. And now you see it didn't look real good at first, right? A lot of concern for like Patagonia's way up here. Yeah, it's trending down, but I can't even see the Outdoor Research chart. But when you pull Patagonia out of there, all of a sudden this chart actually looks really good. You see the seasonality because it's retail. We go to 2021, but pre that, interest was really low, but the brand looks like it really started taking off here. 2021, big growth. 2022, more growth. 2023. There actually, yeah, I'm sorry, that's 2022, 2023 here. Man, that actually, as a standalone brand, not comparing it to Patagonia, which is always a losing battle for just about everybody, it looks like a brand that's trending up. It's a brand that's been around for a long time. Things ebb and flow. It's not always easy to determine why, but I look at this and I think, interesting. We carried actually Outdoor Research originally back in 2018. Not a lot cooking. We actually brought them back in last year and have had a lot of success with them. When you look at this chart, it makes perfect sense. So let's look at another brand that I think is just off the top of my head going to be very similar in size and interest. That's just a guess. We're going to look at Mountain Hardwear. Now, this one gets a little weird because so that's how you spell Mountain Hardwear. Mountain Hardwear, the brand. A lot of people misspell it and use the kind of traditional spelling of hardware, but they got cute with that name. That's okay. We love it. I'm a big fan of this brand. So this one, they do actually give us a sportswear company little subtitle there, so we know that's the right one. Now let's see how this cooks. Interesting. Very, very beautiful and informative chart here, because what you see very clearly in black and white is one brand trending up, one brand trending down. Oof. Okay. So what does this mean? First of all, I love Mountain Hardwear. It's one of our favorite brands that we carry. And the question is, we don't really see this in our shop. And this is where it gets really difficult to make decisions as a retail shop owner, because oftentimes all you see is right in front of you. And if I was just thinking about the interactions we have with our customers, the gear that we see, we do showings of this gear. We really love the Mountain Hardwear lines the last couple seasons. We really love the line coming up in the next 2 seasons. My first tent and sleeping bag, when I, from 25 years ago, both were Mountain Hardwear. Love this brand, right? But if you step back from all of that in your personal experience and look at the total trend in the United States, tells a different story. Okay, well, Denver's unique, right? Denver's different. We're in Denver. We have different demographics, and I want to dive a little deeper. I want to see, okay, maybe they don't love Mountain Hardwear as much as Outdoor Research in New Hampshire, but what about where I'm at? So I'm just going to go into this market and see what's going on. Yeah, it's still the same story. So it's just something I've got to know. I have to be aware of. I support Mountain Hardwear. I love the company. And I think, actually, in my view, with some of the exciting stuff they've got coming out, I think this trend might break, but I have to be aware of this. I owe it to myself and my business to know this, to have this information and to be aware of it. And you do have to make decisions this way, because ultimately we get surprised all the time. When I don't look at the data and I try to run the business off feel and what I love and what I think is cool and what I think is trending, I'd like to think I know, but oftentimes I don't, and I make bad decisions. So, running a small business is an emotional thing. It's a gut thing, and that's important. Never lose that. But I think it's really important to blend that with some of these tools that can be extremely useful, and it keeps you honest. And something like this, I look at it and I say, I have my personal feelings about Outdoor Research, love the brand, have my personal feelings about Mountain Hardwear, love the brand. We'll continue to make little buying decisions based upon what we think is the best product and putting it in front of our community. But I have to know this. I have to know this data, because ultimately, if things don't work out the way I thought, sometimes you can look at the data and it's going to give you the perfect explanation. So this is a really simple tool. Anyone can use it. The interface is elegant. We could dive deeper here, but for most small businesses, I think this is as far as you need to go. If you really want one quick tidbit, if you really want to, don't know where to maybe necessarily, start, with brands and things like that, you can always look at categories and daily search trends down to your geographic area, which is very interesting. Trending now sometimes is just fun to look at, but I think that Explore tab is really where all the magic is. So thanks for joining me today, guys. I hope this is useful, and we'll have more videos coming out soon. This might end up being our first video ever. We'll see how they get posted, but hopefully you guys can put that to really good use in your shop.